The Raid Exotic from Vow of the Disciple Collective Obligation is an interesting gun. A rarity. It is the only other exotic pulse rifle in the energy slot. The first since Graviton Lance, which if you recall, launched with D2. And it is certainly exotic in nature. Let's take a look at it. So it is a Void Pulse, and it seems specifically designed to link up with the Void 3.0 rework. First off, it will automatically reload whenever you gain Devour, a Void Overshield, or become invisible. So there's a little something for everybody. Not too bad, but nothing crazy. Here's where it gets a little crazy. This gun is basically a vacuum for debuffs. It steals debuffs from targets, suppression, weakened, and or volatile. So you shoot something with this gun with one of those debuffs, a little bit, and that'll charge the gun. It actually has a little display on the sights to tell you which buffs you have or are actively stealing. Technically the word is leeching, with the right side dot being suppression, the middle being weakened, the left being volatile, and the bottom light saying that you're actually charged. The first three lights will pop up if you've hit the target, and then the bottom light will turn on once you've dealt enough damage to the target in order to charge the weapon. Then, once the weapon is charged with any of the debuffs, 1, 2, or all 3, you can activate the gun by holding reload, and all of your shots for the next 10 seconds will apply the debuffs that you stole. It then has a 10-second lockout where you cannot do any leeching at all. There's a bit going on there, and while the effect is very interesting, what I want to explore today is if it's actually any good, and more importantly, is it even practical in higher end content? Ultimately, this gun relies on your or your teammates' ability to supply debuffs at a steady rate. We want to maximize the uptime on the activated version of the gun, while also maximizing the amount of debuffs that we have. Suppression, weaken, and volatile all do different things, and their value depends on the target. We want to hit big targets with suppression and weaken, while volatile will be better for smaller targets or one big target with many other smaller targets around it. So what can each class do to apply these debuffs to their maximum? Well, a quick refresher of the volatile flow video that I did will remind us of a couple of fragments that are going to be very important here. I also want to see what life with this gun will be like outside of Season 16, since Volatile Flow is a seasonal artifact mod, and we're not always going to have some kind of mod to help us proc Volatile, not to mention all of the other related Void mods in the artifact. Titans are the only class with an aspect that helps with Volatile, but otherwise, the only other way to apply Volatile without Season 16 mods is with Echo of Instability, unless we get another seasonal artifact mod, and with the charged Warlock melee attack. Echo of Instability and Echo of Undermining are going to be key to the success of this gun, at least while solo, but also in a group. Instability gives you volatile rounds to your Void weapons upon getting a grenade kill, while Undermining will give your Void grenades the weaken effect. So if you hit something with a grenade, they're weakened, and if that grenade is a suppressor grenade, which it likely will be, it will suppress and weaken. You could use Vortex or Void Wall to try to go for volume of targets hit, Axion for a better chance of actually dealing damage to a target, whatever you want, but I'll be sticking with Suppressor because that's one of the 3 debuffs and I want to proc it. Warlocks, this is going to make something like Verity's Brow really nice, not only for yourself, but any other teammates also running this build. Oh, I didn't mention, if 2 people are working together in tandem, you can actually steal buffs off of each other's shots. So while I do want to look at some solo play, I also want to see what 2 people using the gun at the same time are capable of. I chose the 1550 story mission as the solo play experiment because it's pretty close to at-level content, it's challenging but not a slog to go through, and it doesn't have a ton of champions or shielded enemies. Trying things like this in 6-player match-made content is just kind of annoying. Everything is very easily killed on normal, which means you need to work really hard to make the build work, as this gun relies on being able to shoot a target for a little while in order to get the gun charged. When everyone is annihilating everything already, It makes something like this more stressful than it is fun. In 3-player content, much more feasible, but if you have another absolute gamer on your team, it might also get a little annoying. And, as I've said in the past, builds that are good, but make you work really hard to make it work to its maximum, I just don't think are worth your time in most activities, because you spend too much time stressing about making the build work, instead of just, you know, having fun in the video game. The downside of higher level content is a more restricted loadout. We're fortunate that we have Unstoppable Pulse in this season, Season 16, but without Pulse's having a champion mod, this gun really needs to be nuts to make up for the lack of anti-champion capabilities. Okay, solo content. Datto, shut up. Gameplay time, please. I tried this on all 3 classes, maxing out my capabilities, Elemental Ordnance, Elemental Armaments, Reaping Wellmaker. I did runs with and without Volatile Flow as well to see what it's going to be like without having that mod. Titan went pretty well. Grenades are the name of the game here, as Offensive Bulwark and Bastion will constantly be recharging your grenade energy with a little help from Shield Throw if you use Echo of Exchange and Momentum Transfer, or maybe you're just using Impact Induction. I had tier 10 Discipline, and that includes the -20 from Echo of Instability, so technically tier 12. Grenade cooldowns were not a huge concern as long as I was constantly dropping my class ability to get an Overshield. I didn't even have an exotic on because I wanted to stay at tier 10 Discipline. Enjoy Volatile Flow during Season 16, but when it's gone, your Suppressor Grenade will be the thing to trigger all 3 debuffs. A hit for suppression and weaken, a kill to give yourself volatile rounds, which then you'll use on another target. During Season 16, stuff like Elemental Ordnance and Armaments made it so I had plenty of Void Wells to scoop up to trigger Volatile Flow, but considering how often I'm using my class ability, it's not really a huge problem with Reaping Wellmaker. Where Titan was pretty good, Warlock just took this to another level with Verity's Brow as the exotic, Feed the Void, and Child of the Old Gods as aspects, with tier 10 Discipline, again including that -20, and tier 8 Recovery. Constant grenades. Watch how fast they can come back in the gameplay. Not to mention that they hit stupidly hard with death throws at max stacks. It actually became a problem because I wanted to suppress targets so that I could shoot them for the debuff, but the grenade would hit so hard that it just outright killed bigger targets. Ideally, you want to be killing a weak target while suppressing a bigger one at the same time so that you trigger volatile rounds into your gun, and then you shoot the suppressed target to leech suppression and weakness. This isn't always easy to set up though, especially in lower end content. But I got my grenade back so often that I didn't even care. Plus, you're also feeding energy to your teammates for their grenades, and if you're already feeding each other buffs, if you're both using this build, that's really handy. If by some miracle you don't have a grenade, Child of the Old Gods can supply weakness on an entire area of enemies if you plant it pretty well. Rifts are mainly for Reaping Wellmaker so that you can have multiple sources of Void Wells for Season 16, but again, Elemental Ordnance, Elemental Armaments will already be doing some serious work, so you might not even need it, just like Titan. It's just kind of a bonus. And then, to put the icing on the cake, Devour. If you have Devour active, then every kill you get while it's active automatically reloads the gun, increasing your uptime, which is so precious during those 10 seconds when the gun is active. Beautiful. Love it. Absolutely loved it in this mission. Now, if you're a duo, the Warlock is going to be providing the heavy lifting when it comes to debuffs because it's just so easy for them. There are certain areas and rooms that this gun is really going to succeed, but that doesn't mean it's going to be great everywhere, as we'll cover. I did not try any other Warlock exotics as I felt Verity's Brow was already really strong, but I'm sure Nezarek's Sin is also going to be fine here. I was very fixated on grenade usage specifically, but don't forget, Warlocks can trigger Volatile with their melee, so plopping that onto a big target and then shooting it will be nice for when Volatile Flow goes away, which is going to give Nezarek's Sin even more value. Hunters, in Season 16 anyway, can rock just as hard as Titan and Warlock, but it is going to take some extra effort to perform to the same level. Volatile Flow, incredibly easy to proc with Reaping Wellmaker, but without Volatile Flow in follow-up seasons, I am a bit more worried, as the only other way hunters can proc Volatile is with Echo of Instability. Obviously, hunters excel at applying weakness with their Smoke Grenade and Stylish Executioner, but hunters don't really have anything on the level of Titans and Warlocks in terms of grenade energy restoration, except for Devour. Yeah, hunters, they can get Devour. I know it seems weird, but they can. Echo of Starvation is where picking up an Orb of Power procs Devour, and Devour not only gets you health regen, but also grenade energy. Throwing in a helmet mod to make orbs, or using Echo of Harvest, killing a weakened target with a precision shot, spawning an orb, aren't huge commitments to make for the purposes of this build. And hunters really want, I'm going to say need, that grenade regen to stay competitive. If you have Devour active, hunters go pretty hard, but without it, or without a steady flow of enemies to keep it active, you're going to be waiting a while for that grenade. In terms of exotic, I was trying Graviton Forfeit, which speeds up melee regeneration, but at only tier 4 melee, it still took a while to recharge unless I was using Gambler's Dodge to get my melee back. So I really had to keep a mental note of that as someone who doesn't play Hunter very often. Hunters also feel like they need just a little bit more in the stats department. High mobility for dodging, high recovery because, you know, it's good. And then you can get away with, you know, maybe medium discipline, medium strength, since you're going to be regenerating those abilities through other means. It took me a little bit of time to get used to Hunter combat flow compared to Titan and Warlock. There's a lot to keep track of. Kill a couple of enemies, go invis, run up and grab the Orb of Power, then I can throw a grenade, but make sure you don't kill everything with that grenade because then you can't get suppression on your gun. Don't forget about your smoke bomb as well. Oh, make sure you dodge near an enemy to get it back, otherwise you're going to need to wait. Oh, remember that orb you picked up? You need to kill something within 5 seconds to reset the timer so you can go back up to 10 seconds, but if you miss that window, you need to start over. Also make sure it's back-to-back weapon kills, otherwise you won't spawn the orb, so you can't really spawn orbs too consistently with Volatile active. You see what I mean? If you're able to get the engine moving and keep it moving, you'll be very destructive. But the moment something broke, it felt like I needed to completely reset my whole gameplay flow. Having that many moving parts outside of solo content, you know, forget about it. Also, invisibility is hit or miss a lot of the time. It's great to reposition yourself, and I am equating invisibility with the Hunter class ability here, which might not be a great comparison. I don't know, call the cops, see if I care. But it didn't feel like it had the same impact as a Titan Barricade or a Warlock Rift in terms of what those things ended up offering to the combat experience for those classes. Going invisible procced the auto reload from the gun, and that really felt like that was it. You know, it's purely defensive in nature. Once you shoot your gun, invisibility falls off, and then that's it. The other class abilities are also defensive, but they provide power to the builds through their aspects, at least what felt like more power compared to the Hunter. When it comes to group play, I ran the Lightblade Master Nightfall with someone else using the raid exotic so that we can keep flipping debuffs to each other, and when we could keep that rolling, it was pretty destructive without that much hassle. You just have to call out a target. The first main room after starting the strike is an excellent place for this kind of setup. Lots of enemies with varying health spawning in, plenty of opportunity to target swap and debuff swap. It worked very well. Outside of that room, it was a different story, and that's just because of what the rest of the strike is. Up until the boss room and maybe the section right before it, there were basically no really strong opportunities. In the boss room, it wasn't too shabby, but whenever the fight became about just dealing damage to the boss, the gun wasn't doing that much. Against champions, it was okay, but champions are immune to suppression, and just plinking away at a champion with volatile and weakened is not really going to be enough, especially in this strike. You know, have fun on GM, by the way. Plus, you got stuff like Arbalest breaking anti-barrier in one shot and then just chunking down champions. It's just better to use special or heavy weapons to kill champions. This doesn't ramp up like an Outbreak Perfected can to get super high primary damage. But it's not designed for that, you know, so that's okay. And not every strike or every activity is going to have situations where this gun thrives. This season, we have Scarlet Keep, Arms Dealer, Light Blade, Glassway, Saber, and Birthplace of the Vial as the GMs. And most of those do have good opportunities for this kind of setup to work. But this demands a really, really specific setup. 2 people on the pulse, both preferably on Void subclasses. It's very offensively minded, and having some amount of defense is a good thing in something like a GM Nightfall, which is where I suppose that final player can come in. In the raid, it can really thrive in the final boss room with how many enemies there are. 2 people can keep things really locked down, but they can also do that with a couple of Trinity Ghouls to the same effect with minimal effort and without needing specific mods, gear, or subclasses. So, the gun seems all well and good, but I definitely have some criticisms. Number 1 is the cooldown. 10 seconds with no ability to vacuum debuffs feels like an eternity, at least while by yourself, and even in a group. Watching those seconds count down can just be agonizing. Number 2 is that volatile rounds feel like they're all you need sometimes. It's cool to be able to shoot a bunch of enemies and throw a bunch of debuffs around and all that kind of stuff, but when volatile rounds just start exploding, most things end up dying anyway, additional debuffs or not. Also, I know some people weren't too enthused with the scope blocking a lot of screen real estate. I'm going to be waiting for the ornament to roll around for dust to scoop that up. And again, when all of these Void seasonal mods go away in Season 17 and there's nothing to replace them, what is going to happen to this gun? So in conclusion, this gun with an ideal setup, whether it's solo or in a team, has very, very high destructive capabilities. Warlocks especially, thanks to Verity's Brow, probably Nezarec Sin too. Do I think this is the next best thing? I'm not too sure, and I think it's because it requires such a specific setup with not a ton of flexibility in a game that demands at least a little flexibility in endgame content. Not to mention that there are already plenty of good Void 3.0 Season 16 type builds out there that don't really demand as much of you, but also provide a lot of destruction anyway. It's definitely a novelty though, and I enjoy running it to the point where I am going to be saving the build on my Warlock. If you haven't gotten the exotic to drop just yet though, I wouldn't worry too much. At least not until someone finds something super game breaking about this. Then maybe I would worry, but it's probably not going to happen. Maybe, who knows. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.